I have gathered these friends to open some more conversation about friendship. Send this on down to Becca and Al. No, I need to read the question first. How did coming out impact your friendships?
Do you want to go first?
If you want me to. As the saying goes, you win some, you lose some, and that's what happened. I told my best friend that I was going to talk about him today when I did this, and he said, "But you're not going to tell that one story." And I said, "Oh, no, I'm not, so I'm going to tell it to you now." Coming out brought me the best friend that I have, who is a part of my chosen family. And the story is, I was really nervous. We were having one of our late night conversations, and he was talking about what kind of thing he would like in a friend and what it means to be friends. And I said, well, you know, I have something to tell you, and I'm not sure if we're still going to be friends afterwards, so just hold that thought, and maybe one day I'll tell you, and this will happen. And he was like, you need to tell me what it is. We can't just leave me on that. And so then he was like, okay, I'm just going to start operating under some assumptions if you don't tell me. And I was like, oh, shit, he knows. So then, and he goes, okay, you know what? I'm just going to say it. You're in love with me. And I did that. And then he said, oh. So then we had a different talk after that. And I said, if you're in love with me, that's okay, but I don't like you like that. Yeah. A DTR in that case. So that kind of, this is a determine the relationship conversation is what that was. So we had that conversation, and from that point, because at that time I thought I was the only queer Christian in the world that existed, who knew about you people? And so it made an opportunity for him and I to commit to each other in friendship. And we decided that we were going to be family for each other no matter what happened. And it was because of my coming out that happened, because he was a safe place for that to happen. I've also lost a bunch of friends, either when I first came out to them, or when I started dating my fiance, or when I got a fiance. As things went on, some people realized they couldn't track with me in my life anymore. And that's a tough thing to go through, but I think I'll talk about that later too.
You can't make that shit up. That's good. Straight out of a sitcom almost. This is harder than I thought it was going to be, so I wrote a couple things down, so hope you don't mind if I just read some reflections. My coming out experience has been kind of in two stages. I don't know if anybody else can relate with that. The first stage was coming out as gay, and but by the time I had said anything to anybody, I had already concluded at the time that I would remain celibate and kind of hold a side B position. Looking back, I think I did that out of a mode of survival. In any case, this coming out experience was marked by a beautiful vulnerability, and an acceptance and a deepening of relationships, especially those inside my church circles. However, I see now that in a lot of ways I made it a lot less of a struggle to navigate conversations and continue in relationships, even though I was out, especially in my Christian circles. So that brings me to the second stage, stage that I feel like I'm still in at the moment, and it entails a lot of breaking down, like a deconstruction, if you will, of beliefs, tradition, theology, and that also includes my beliefs about my own sexuality and gender identity. At the same time, trying to be intentional about cultivating a generous space for myself in my own life and for others. My experience over the last 2 years or so has proven this to be far more taxing on some of my relationships than even my first coming out experience. There's a tension, a feeling like I'm letting my friends down, and that my being in this space of deconstruction is worrisome. Just recently, I was informed that by a friend that we do kids camp together for inner city Hamilton kids, and he informed me that I was no longer able to participate this year because of my shift on sexuality and gender. And this is somebody that I came out to probably about half a dozen years ago, the first time around. So yeah, still trying to navigate what that looks like through the hurt and the pain. It's definitely tough stuff. I will say though that I have had some really neat relationships begin and thrive inside the second stage, and for that I'm really grateful.
So when I came out, I also came out as side B and celibate, and I'm still in that space today, still pursuing celibacy, that is. And coming out affected my relationships in numbers of ways, but I would say that it wasn't until I started being vocal that that actually became an issue for people. And also vocal in ways that I don't think everyone would expect. Like the fact that I came into this conversation pushing people's boundaries on what friendship and family is was the thing that pissed them off. I came in and said, hey, so you hold a side B position as a church, that's great, but you're doing absolutely nothing to help those people in any way to keep that. And so for me, at least once I started speaking up, that's kind of where it all came crashing down, was that I started pushing people on what it means to be a good friend, what it means to be family together, and that's not something that's easy in any way. I'm terrible at it most of the time myself, but I'm willing to try new things and try to figure all that out.
Some in the room might not know the codified language of side B. So for those of you who are scratching your heads and wondering, that is the theological view that reserves marriage between one man and one woman, and therefore LGBT people should live celibate lives or be in mixed orientation marriages, that is, married to someone of the opposite gender. So just trying to break down some insider language for folks. Now, Chris, you kind of began to touch on this question, but can you tell us more about what you've learned about friendship since coming out?
Yes, I jumped in on the last one just because I felt like I wanted to add a little bit of talk onto that as well. But yeah, so what I've been learning since kind of coming out about friendship is essentially just breaking it down and redefining it, because I feel like often people kind of see like all our different types of relationships as very separate. You have friends, you have a spouse, you have whatever else, you have work friends, and so forth, and they all have these boundaries and they can't overlap. And I think that's just completely backwards, because I think there's a reason why people often say, my spouse is my best friend. It's because these things kind of overlap and there's kind of blurry things in between. And when we kind of put these defined lines between everything, we tend to say that certain behaviors are only acceptable in one form of relationship, when they might be acceptable in multiple. So one thing that I've been learning is the importance of physical touch between friends. And it's something that often is stigmatized within the church, is this idea that physical contact is reserved for people who are married or who are below a certain age. That you can only really be like huggy or cuddly with people when you're a child. And then when you get older, it's just unacceptable because it's sexualized. And so for me, it's just kind of learning what these new boundaries are, and learning that maybe for me, relationships are more defined on what is acceptable between people as opposed to general rules. But like, what is, if, say, my friend isn't okay with me being close and, I don't know, cuddly, touchy-feely person or whatever, then we can set that boundary for ourselves. And we don't have to say that, oh, all friends can't do that. But we set these boundaries in a healthy way between ourselves. And maybe some people think that kissing isn't okay within friendships and stuff. Great, then I won't kiss you. But personally, I think that that's fine. And in no way is it harmful to me or stunting my faith or whatever.
Oh, this, I've got my own.
Oh, is it working?
Sorry. We'll fake it. No, it's a little bit on. Can you hear me?
No. Can you hear me now? What are some of the challenges you've encountered in navigating friendship with straight Christians? We'll start with Chad, and then Chris, and then Becca. We'll skip out for this one.
Okay, so I think, first of all, I would like to publicly thank and acknowledge all the straight Christians who are here this weekend. So I have a few in the audience, so thank you very much. Okay.
Got your token straight people here?
Token straight people, yeah. My journey has been very interesting. And some of the challenges that I've had with my straight Christian friends, I've had straight Christian friends who have welcomed me, who have embraced me, who basically has said, oh, I've known you were gay. Typical. Okay, sorry. But then there are the ones that I grew up with in the same church who were treating me the same, except until a point of theological discussion. And she looked across the table from me and said, I'm confused because you're talking about spiritual things in the Bible, but the Bible is very clear about what it says in your relationship. So I was a little more risque at that point in my life, so I had no problems turning back to her and saying, I'm pretty sure the Bible's pretty clear about you and supposed to be wearing a head covering and being silent. But here's the thing. Her response to that was, but that's different. Yeah, I decided to stop the conversation at that point. However, we've never decided to talk about any more of that. She still wants a relationship with me. I don't know if she is changing at all. I don't think so. I don't think she ever will. But my mission that I've discovered is to continue to love, to continue to show her that I am the same person that I've been since I was a little boy, that it's okay. It's okay for you to be where you are, and it's okay for me to be where I am. So, anyways.
So I'm going to be awful and ask you to repeat the question again.
What are some of the challenges you've encountered with navigating friendship with straight Christians?
Some of the challenges. There's a lot. I would say the biggest one is getting people to recognize that I have the Holy Spirit as well.
Yes!
Amen! That seems to be the biggest problem because when we come to the table and we talk about these and we discuss these and we debate these things, like it often happens, it's very clear to see when they are just listening to respond instead of listening to understand. And essentially, I find the difference is when they recognize that I have the Holy Spirit or not. Whether that they think that I'm just here to deceive them, or if I'm here to honestly seek after God. So that's probably the biggest challenge for me, is just trying to get that across and trying to love them and show them that Christ is working in my life.
I think some of the challenges I've faced is knowing where I stand in my friendships and in my relationships with people. I think when I first came out, as Al alluded to, sometimes there's a double coming out that we do. Coming out and just telling you this is who I am, but then I came out kind of a second time to say, and I'm dating a woman. So I think there was people, friends originally that said, I mean, I love you, you're my friend, so I don't know if we agree on this, but I love you and you're my friend and I want to be your friend. And then when I started dating my partner, seeing that maybe there was a little bit of uneasiness there, actually, and being like, do we need to have another conversation about how me dating someone affects our relationship? And yeah, just so trying to figure out where I stand with people, and having to have that conversation that I think a lot of straight Christians don't have to have with their friends when they start dating someone new. Of like, okay, so now I'm dating someone, are we cool? Like, I was not invited to my friend's wedding because I couldn't come with Mary. So I didn't get to go because her parents weren't cool with it. But up until that point, the conversations we were having were, no, I love you, we're cool, I love Mary, it's great, but you can't come to my wedding. So just trying to figure out, where do I actually stand with you? I'm not ever asking you to agree with my theological position, but are you still there to stand for my flourishing and for the flourishing of my relationship? And if not, then we need to have a different conversation. But it's just always being the person to have to bring up that conversation and check in on that. Yeah, that's a challenge. Okay.
So Becca.
Speak in the mic, speak in the mic, speaking in the mic. I'm speaking in the mic, still speaking in the mic. Becca, you already alluded to chosen family. Do you want to tell us just a little bit more about what that concept means for you and how you have flourished within chosen family?
Sure. So I think a lot of people in the LGBTQ plus community talk about chosen family. That can stem from the fact that maybe our birth families have walked away from us, or we struggle with them, or we need to walk away from them. So we are a part of a bigger community, and oftentimes we find family and we choose that family to be a part of our lives, and to be in intentional community, intentional relationship with each other. I feel like I have people that as I alluded to, my best friend, we have like committed to be in family with each other. There are other people that are part of my chosen family that are people that I know that I can call upon. And there's lots of different practical ways that happen. Sometimes it's literally just texting someone to vent about something and be like, the patriarchy is alive today and I need some help with it. Or it looks like friends who all pitched in to pay for the hotel room for my partner and I when we had to go to her mother's funeral because we weren't allowed to stay in their family home together. So that kind of stuff is a practical thing that our family showed up for us for. Yeah, other things like literally coming to my blood family's dinners and just being a supportive person to be like, hey, we're cool with this. Like, you guys can be cool with this too. Yeah. Does that answer the question? Okay.
You can pass it to Al. Yeah, Al. This is for Chris and Al. What do you wish the church community would rediscover, or reimagine about the significance of friendship? What do you wish the church community would rediscover?
I think I would start with that it's significant. Probably be a good start. I don't think we do that at all. Friendships matter. They're a lot of work. They're critical to my health as an individual, but I think also the health and vitality of any community. And yet, in my experience, no offense to married people, but marriage and family and kids are propped up as this, like, the pinnacle relationship. And I would go so far as saying that propping up marriage does both a disservice to married people, feeling like they can't live up to that standard, as well as a disservice to any other kind of form of relationship. And it's automatically downgraded as insignificant. You know, if that's the significant relationship, then everything else is kind of sub that. So what I would love to see church communities, my community, commit to is learning about nurturing, growing in what the idea of friendship really means, the kinds of relationships that we engage in, the kinds of friendships we engage in, how to embrace tension, manage conflict. Like, these are all life skills, and they're often talked about in the context of marriage, and churches don't think about any of that in the context of any other relationship. And I think what it would do is nurture and expand our ability to love unconditionally. We hear a lot about the unconditional love of God, and we see marriage as, you know, this, like I said, this pinnacle relationship that reflects this divine love of unconditional love, and yet friendship's kind of like sub-part of that, and there's really no consideration for friendships engaging in that kind of unconditional love. And I think if we were to really embrace friendship as a significant relationship, different to that of marriage, they're just different. I think that we could really expand in that idea of unconditional love to give unconditional love and also receive it. And yeah, I think we don't do that very well. And I think treating it as something significant and leaning into that would definitely help us grow in that.
So you definitely hit the nail on the head for sure. And so I won't repeat a lot of what you said already, but so kind of touching on something that you mentioned before, the church is specifically more so the evangelical church than anything else, but the church in general does have this focus on the nuclear family, and you have to fit into one of those roles or else you don't seem to really fit into church. So essentially, I would say that, yeah, to reinvestigate the importance of friendship and family and what family even is and what even friendship even is something that needs to be discussed more, because it's more than just me who is a gay person who's decided to pursue celibacy that is affected by this. It's people who are widowers, it's people who are single parents, it's people who, anyone who isn't a part of that nuclear family mold is affected by this. And it's very alienating to walk into a church and hear all these wedding announcements and engagements announcements and all these family events that they're planning, but then there's not really a support for me. Going in there and realizing that there is there's almost an aversion to it. I've even gone in before and pitched ideas for ways to help single people in the community wherever they are, and they say, oh, well, that's just going to turn into a dating pool, so we're not going to do it. And it's like, well, tell me a better way then. But yeah, just this focus, for sure, is on family and friendship is, I think, crucial. It's something that is understated. We just read a verse from Ruth that shows a great example of people who don't fit into a nuclear family mold but have chosen to embrace one another and love one another anyway. And in some very charged language that kind of sounds like wedding vows even. Yeah.
So we're getting to the end of our time, but I want to ask Chad, in what ways have you grown in the virtue of being a good friend?
Okay, actually, before I answer that question, I just want to clarify in my last story when I told my friend, it's very clear in the Bible what it says about women. I do not believe that, okay? Please. I was trying to make a very clear point.
We got it.
Okay, good. Okay, so, this is another hard question. I'm a very social person. I'm an extrovert, and I consider myself a good friend. Yes, sorry. So, dealing with the different levels of friendship over the last few years, especially when it comes to my sexuality and my relationship with my husband, it's stretched me. It's taught me, first of all, boundaries, which we've already heard a little bit, what boundaries mean. It's taught me patience, kindness, and overall grace, which is, I think, the hardest one, because you deeply want relationships with people. And even though their relationship with you might be superficial, there's still a deep need for that relationship. I'm still learning about this virtue of friendship and what it means deeper. But I've learned lots, and I can tell you that this retreat has definitely been helpful. So thank you to all of you very much.
So this question is our last one, and it's for everyone. How do you think we can practice, notice the word practice, a deeper culture of friendship in the generous space community? How can we practice that deeper culture of friendship in the generous space community?
Okay. It's good to be stretched. It's good to be uncomfortable. That's been something I've learned. A white Baptist boy here. I can tell you I've been stretched. And thank God for being stretched. Thank God.
I would say that we need to start taking friendship more seriously, and that also means taking examples of how we take dating and marriage seriously. Taking a book from there is define the relationship. Is having those talks with friends and saying, like, where are we at with this? Are we at the point where we get each other gifts for our birthdays? Are we? Where are we? Where are we on this road together? Or like, is it okay for me to join you for Christmas or whatever it might be? It's just setting up this expectation of what type of relationships we have with people, whatever type they are.
I think what I've appreciated about Generous Space over the last year, I came to the retreat last year, kind of at the beginning, or somewhat at the beginning of this year of hell. Deconstruction, sorry. And I think what I appreciated most about it was I was right in the middle last year of kind of tearing down this, non-affirming side B, to use that language. And I was just really welcomed with open arms at the retreat. I think get those, awful looks, when I said I was, like this is where I was at in my journey. People were like, absolutely, like that is neat that you're on this journey, and we're so glad you're here. I thought, wow, like I was just very, very, very moved. And I think if we can be more intentional about being that for other people. I mean, we talk about being generous space. That is being generous space. And it requires a massive amount of intentionality to be that for other people. And I think that's the beginning of what true friendship is really about, that kind of unconditional love that I think the church can move into, and I think we as a community can equally move into that. I think we're leaps and bounds ahead of where a lot of other communities are, and we're paving a new way. And if we can continue that, it's going to take everybody, not just a few. It's going to take everybody. So that would be my 2 cents.
I think a key word that you said, Wendy, is a culture of friendship. In a room this size that represents like a very small portion of what the generous space community is, we can't be best friends with everyone that are here. We can't even necessarily have intentional friendships with everybody that's here. But I think all of our 4 values, but specifically hospitality and mutuality, really help us to shape the culture of friendship that we can create. And so how we practice that can be hospitality things of just if there's a new person that comes in, just stretching ourselves to say, hey, are you new? How did you find? My favorite question is, how did you find out about us? It's a really easy icebreaker. Usually the answer is Beth. But that kind of thing, if there's people new to the group, if you can just even bring snacks to your generous space gathering, maybe that's a thing that can be hospitality for you. And mutuality, I think a really important point there is it means looking for ways that I can show up in solidarity with my siblings that are here, but also recognizing that if it's actually mutual, I need to be willing to share my need too. So what is it that I need support in? How do I need to ask for people to stand in solidarity with me so that we can have that mutuality together and build a friendship from that?
I wish we had more time because this is a panel with a lot of wisdom. If I had time, I would ask this question, which I don't. So I'm going to ask it rhetorically, which means all of you need to really think about it. And I invite you to pray about it. There are lonely people in the GS community. As I said last night, there are people who chose not to come to the retreat because their fear of feeling excluded. How can we recognize both the limitations of not being able to be best friends with 140 people or the 700 who connect to us online, but how can we really practice virtues and values and intention and connection that ensures that people are growing up into owning their need, sharing their resources, and finding deep connection and meaning in the generous space community. Please thank our panel.